A name is not just what people call you, it's the weight you force them to carry when they remember what you survived. Chosen ones, let me tell you something spine-chilling yet undeniable. Your name just got heavier, and you don't even realize how much. Scientists say sound can linger in a room long after the voice has stopped speaking. But here's the kicker. Your name lingers in people's minds long after you've left the scene. It doesn't just echo, it haunts. See, when your name is brought up now, it doesn't float through the air like small talk. It drops like an iron weight on the table. People pause. Their tone changes. Some swallow hard before saying it, while others avoid it like they're trying to dodge a bill collector. And we all know nobody dodges calls like someone owing money, right? That's the impact you've made. Your name stopped being just letters and sounds. It became a story, a testimony, and in some cases a warning label. The world feels the shift, even if they'll never admit it to your face. And the funny part, you probably still catch yourself thinking, me? Little old me? Oh yes, you. The weight is real, and the truth is undeniable. Your name is no longer light enough to ignore. It's heavy enough to reshape the room, shift the narrative, and remind people they can't erase you from the script. This isn't just growth. This is gravity. And tonight we're going to break down why your name just became one of the heaviest things anyone can carry. Number 1. Your name became a warning label. Your name became a warning label because of what it now represents. It's no longer just a set of syllables people casually mention in passing. It carries weight, it carries memory, and it carries the uncomfortable truth of what you've lived through. When people bring your name up now, it forces them to acknowledge a reality they can't control or bury. It's not admiration alone, it's also caution. It tells them, without you even speaking, don't try it, don't play with this one, don't underestimate. The reason your name shifted into this territory is because you survived things that were supposed to silence you permanently. When people realize you're still standing, they instinctively treat you differently. They remember how hard life came for you, or how others tried to break you, and yet here you are, not only surviving but growing. That alone becomes threatening. It means every trick they thought worked on others didn't work on you. Your name is now tied to the idea of resistance. And resistance scares people who rely on control. Even those who once underestimated you feel it. Your name stings in their mouths because they know they can't repeat old patterns with you. They can't manipulate you in the same ways. They can't treat you as disposable. Your name became a living reminder that their attempts failed. So now, when it comes up, it doesn't sound harmless anymore. It carries a signal. It's like a hazard sign that says, this one has fireproof skin. This one doesn't fall the way you think. What's wild is that you didn't set out to make your name a warning. You were just living, just enduring, just doing what you had to do to keep your spirit intact. But the weight of your survival turned into something undeniable. People feel it when they hear your name, even if they never admit it. Some avoid it altogether because they can't handle the heat it brings up in their chest. Others speak it carefully, like they're handling something breakable. Not because you're fragile, but because they know they are. That's why your name is heavier now. It carries proof, caution, and consequence all at once. It's not just you they're responding to. It's the weight of everything they failed to bury. And whether they like it or not, your name warns them you're not to be played with. Number 2, they don't say your name casually anymore. They don't say your name casually anymore because it no longer feels casual. It has shifted into something that demands attention, even hesitation. Before, people might have tossed it around loosely, attaching jokes, gossip, or careless comments to it. But now, when your name comes up, the atmosphere changes. It isn't said without thought. It's weighed. It's measured. It's handled differently because it triggers too much. That shift happened because your journey left behind undeniable evidence. People saw you walk through storms that should have erased you, and yet you emerged with strength that can't be ignored. Your name now carries that history. So when it comes up in conversation, it presses on people in ways they didn't expect. For some, it's admiration. For others, it's discomfort. But either way, it's never light. Even the ones who used to mock or doubt you don't use your name the way they once did. They've learned that every time it's spoken, it brings back memories they'd rather forget. Memories of underestimating you, of betting against you, of seeing you at your lowest and assuming that's where you'd stay. Your name has now become proof that they were wrong. And proof is heavy. Proof doesn't let people get away with old lies. That's why you'll notice your name avoided in certain rooms. People replace it with vague descriptions or change the subject altogether, as if saying it out loud would summon a truth they aren't ready to face. On the flip side, there are those who speak your name with a new kind of respect, almost carefully, because they know the depth of what you've overcome. They understand it's not just a name, it's a marker of resilience. The fascinating thing is that you didn't campaign for this change. You didn't go around demanding people respect your name or treat it differently. Life did that for you. The journey etched so much into who you are that your very name can't be separated from the weight of your story. That's why it doesn't roll off tongues casually anymore. Now your name has become a trigger, a reminder, and in many ways a mirror. And the people who once spoke it without thought now have to handle it with care, because deep down they know they're not just saying your name, they're acknowledging your impact. Number 3, your existence became historical evidence. You're not just a person anymore, you've become historical evidence. Your very existence testifies to the fact that the odds can be beaten, that the labels can be ripped off, and that the traps set for you don't have the final say. People can argue about opinions, but they can't argue with evidence. And that's what your life has turned into. Every scar, every recovery, every victory carved into you is like a record that proves survival on a level that defies expectation. Your name is now tied to that evidence. What makes this so powerful is that it's not just your personal history anymore. It's become part of a bigger narrative that others rely on. People who are quietly going through their own battles see your life and realize what's possible. Without you saying a word, your survival becomes a fact they can lean on, proof that destruction isn't always the end. That's why your impact stretches further than you know. Your story has leaked into places and people you've never even met. It's also evidence against those who tried to bury you. Their actions, their schemes, and their betrayals are now written into your survival story, but not in the way they intended. Instead of erasing you, they became footnotes to your resilience. Your very being is a record of their failure. That's why your name feels heavier to them. Every time it's mentioned, they're forced to remember that what they attempted to kill is still alive and stronger. That truth alone can eat them from the inside out. And this isn't evidence that fades with time. History has a way of preserving what really matters, and you've become part of that preservation. Years from now, people will still refer back to the fact that you made it through things that looked impossible. That's why your presence feels so different now. You're not just here. You're documented in the energy of those who witnessed your climb, and in the lives of those who take courage from it. Your name being historical evidence means it can't be denied, ignored, or rewritten. They can distort stories, but they can't erase the reality that you lived and endured. You've become a standing record that shifts the way others see struggle and survival. That weight is why your name now carries more impact than ever before. Number 4. Your struggles became a silent biography. Your struggles became a silent biography because every step you took under pressure wrote a chapter, even if no pen touched paper. You might not have published a memoir or stood on a stage explaining what you endured, but your scars became living sentences. People can look at your life and see the story for themselves, the setbacks, the betrayals, the losses, the dark nights. Yet what makes it so powerful is not the pain itself, but the way you carried it. That's what people can't ignore. Your name isn't tied to victimhood, even though you had every reason to collapse under the weight of what you faced. Instead, it's tied to endurance, to that quiet strength that kept you standing when others would have given up. That's why your story speaks louder without you having to explain it. People who know even fragments of your journey understand there's a depth behind your eyes that isn't ordinary. They may not know the details, but they can sense the history. That's your silent biography speaking. The beauty of it is that your struggles didn't define you by the damage. They defined you by the resilience. The scars you carry aren't just reminders of what happened. They're evidence of how you rose above it. They turned into symbols of transformation, proof that you didn't just survive, you outgrew what tried to limit you. Your life became an unspoken testimony that strength doesn't need a microphone to be heard. And here's the part that shakes people the most. Your biography exposes truth without you ever accusing anyone. The way you live, the way you stand, the way you continue moving forward. It all tells on those who tried to break you. Their actions are written into your survival, not as triumphs for them, but as footnotes of failure. Every scar says, they tried but they couldn't win. That's why your story hits harder without you saying a word. Your struggles crafted a legacy of resilience that no one can erase. Even in silence, the lessons from your pain echo louder than any book on a shelf. And now, your name doesn't drag the weight of tragedy. It carries the authority of someone who lived through the unlivable and came out unbroken. That's a biography written not with ink, but with endurance. Number 5. You redefined what power looks like. You redefined what power looks like because you broke the illusion most people were raised to believe in. For the longest time, power was measured by how much money someone had, the status they held, or the influence they could throw around in a room. Society glorifies those things, holding them up as proof of strength, but then there's you, someone who may not have fit those traditional molds yet carried a strength that couldn't be bought, borrowed, or staged. Your very survival, your unshakable clarity, and your refusal to live in falsehood disrupted the old definition of power. Your name now carries that disruption. When it comes up, people are reminded that authority doesn't always wear a suit, carry a title, or drive a luxury car. Sometimes authority looks like a soul that refused to be broken, even when everything was designed to crush it. That's unsettling for those who built their identities on shallow foundations, because you've proven that the realest kind of power is endurance. Not the kind that flexes in public, but the kind that keeps showing up, keeps growing, and keeps standing when the dust settles. Resilience became your crown. You showed that strength isn't about how loud you can talk, but about how much weight you can carry without folding. Clarity became your weapon. You cut through lies, manipulation, and illusions without needing to shout about it. Truth became your foundation. And that trio, resilience, clarity, and truth, shakes far more than any pile of wealth or fleeting spotlight ever could. That's why your impact is so unsettling. It reveals how fragile the world's version of power really is. People who used to dismiss you are now forced to reckon with that shift. They realize that titles can be taken, money can be lost, and influence can vanish overnight. But the kind of power you carry can't be stolen, copied, or bribed out of you. It lives inside you, and it grows stronger every time life tests you. That's why your name stands heavier now. It represents a new standard of power. Not the kind that intimidates with fear, but the kind that transforms with truth. You've proven that real power isn't what sits in someone's hands, but what survives in their soul when everything else is stripped away. Number 6, your name carries their guilt back to them. When your name is spoken, it acts like a returning echo that brings their misdeeds back to the surface. People who hurt you thought they could move on, rewrite stories, or close the chapter, but your continued presence prevents that neat, tidy ending. Their guilt doesn't stay buried where they hoped. Instead, it resurfaces in the small moments. A tightening in the voice, a flicker of avoidance, a defensiveness that reveals more than it hides. Your name becomes the reminder they can't schedule away or ignore at dinner parties. You didn't give them a comeback, life did. Every time you stand tall, show up, or speak truth, their past actions get reflected back at them with sharper clarity. That reflection isn't loud or dramatic most of the time. It's quieter and nastier. The little truths that make them rewind conversations in private. The late-night doubts that scratch at their sleep. The tiny regrets that look like compassion but feel like tremors. Those tremors are your name doing the work they refuse to do. They experience this not as a logical argument they can counter, but as an internal punishment. Logic doesn't fix conscience. Explanations, gaslighting, or PR campaigns may erase a public record, but they cannot erase the personal ledger that your survival and dignity keep open. Each mention of your name is an accounting entry they didn't want to reconcile. Their guilt is a debt that accrues interest every time your story shows up unedited and real. This is why some people try to avoid your name entirely. Avoidance is an admission in its own currency. When someone goes out of their way to sidestep saying your name, it reveals the weight that name carries in their private world. Others try to neutralize it by attaching flatteries or weak apologies that don't land. Those attempts only expose the wound further, making the sting sharper because it signals awareness without responsibility. Your name becoming their unfinished business also changes the power dynamic. They intended to make you the story they controlled. Instead, you became the unresolved chapter that keeps opening on them. Your existence forces a moral balance they didn't plan to face. The conscience they tried to silence now has a persistent reminder, and reminders are more effective than accusations. So your name works like a mirror and a metronome. It reflects what they tried to hide and keeps time on the guilt they hoped would fade. It presses quietly, constantly, until something shifts. Accountability, shame, or at least recognition. That pressure is discomfort for them, but it's a form of justice for you. Your name does not let their wrongs disappear. It carries them back, steady and unmistakable. Number 7. Your presence created new alliances. Your presence created new alliances because people respond to authenticity the way magnets respond to metal. They don't always explain why, they just move toward it. Without campaigning, without recruiting, you became a center of gravity. Strangers who have felt unseen or unheard recognize something in you that aligns with their own quiet convictions. They start to stand a little taller, speak a little clearer, or take an action they'd been postponing. That alignment isn't theatrical. It's a private, steady joining of forces that happens when someone realizes they are not the only one carrying a certain truth. These alliances form in small, practical ways. Someone in a different city shares your story with a friend who needed to hear it. A person in a workplace decides to stop tolerating the same toxicity because your endurance made refusal seem possible. An online stranger offers support to someone else because they saw how you navigated pain. None of these people ask for your permission. They don't need you to know them personally to be moved to act. Your name becomes shorthand for a posture, a refusal to be flattened by life's worst chapters. And that shorthand organizes people who would otherwise remain isolated. Your influence recruits courage quietly, and that's the most dangerous kind for those who benefit from silence. Warriors show up not as a parade but as practical helpers. A lawyer who offers pro bono advice, a neighbor who refuses to stay silent in an abusive situation, a former critic who becomes an ally because they've watched you rebuild. These are not symbolic gestures. They are hard, concrete moves that alter outcomes. The alliances you create are not built on hype, they're built on realignment. People shifting their loyalties from convenience to conviction. That shift changes dynamics. Groups form across boundaries that used to separate people, age, class, background, and suddenly there's a network of people who will act when something unjust appears. They don't need to call themselves anything. They show up. They protect, amplify, and occasionally correct when the story gets distorted. Your presence becomes a rally point for integrity that others adopt without a formal invitation. This kind of influence asks something of you, even if you didn't ask for it, responsibility. You didn't cause the movement, but it gathers around you. How you carry yourself now matters because people are learning how to behave from watching you. That's a heavy privilege and an unavoidable consequence. Your presence created new alliances, and those alliances will change more lives than any single speech or post ever could. Number 8. Your name became currency. Your name became currency because it no longer just identifies you. It carries value in social exchanges. People use it the way they would a key or a coin, something that can open doors or close them depending on how it's handled. When your name is brought up, it adds weight to conversations. It's no longer neutral. It either elevates the person saying it or exposes something they'd rather keep hidden. That shift means your name now functions as a kind of transaction, and everyone who mentions it feels the exchange. Some people trade your name to gain credibility. They bring it up like a badge, as if knowing you, being connected to you, or even just being aware of your story somehow increases their worth. It's their way of signaling proximity to strength. For them, your name has become a shortcut to respect they haven't earned on their own. You'll see this when people drop your name in circles where you're not present, hoping it boosts their standing. That's not by accident. It's because your name has measurable weight now. Others, though, treat your name like it's too expensive to say. To speak, it would force them to confront their own lies, hypocrisy, or cowardice. They avoid using it the way someone avoids a debt collector, because they know it will cost them something they don't want to pay. In their silence, you see the shadow side of the value your name carries. They can't afford to bring you up without also bringing up the truth they've been running from. The dual nature of your name as currency reveals how deeply your presence has disrupted things. It's both an asset and a liability, depending on who's holding it. For some, it's like carrying gold. They polish it, display it, and try to invest it. For others, it's like holding evidence, dangerous, incriminating, and best hidden. That's the kind of weight that changes social economies. You didn't make your name into currency, life did. The battles you endured, the victories you claimed, and the resilience you carry all infused it with value. Now, whether spoken or avoided, your name performs an exchange. It either grants credibility to the speaker or deducts comfort from them. And that's why it's heavier than most realize, because currency always reveals what people are really worth. Number 9. You exposed the fragility of their systems. By withstanding what was meant to break you, you revealed something everyone else depended on: the illusion of invulnerability. They built systems, rules, hierarchies, quiet agreements, designed to control outcomes and make doubt expensive. Those systems looked secure because they relied on predictable reactions, compliance, shame, or silence. When you didn't follow the script, their confidence faltered. Your survival was the proof that the machinery they trusted had gaps, and once a gap is visible, the whole machine looks less dependable. Their responses were never just personal attacks. They were tests of structure. Institutions and power networks assume people will fold at certain pressures. You refused to. That refusal didn't just embarrass individuals, it undermined the assumptions those systems used to function. People who benefited from the setup suddenly had to reassess how stable everything really was. A single person who refuses to be erased turns a theory into a failing case study. This exposure changes behavior fast. Allies become nervous, enforcers slow down. The polished narratives that once held up start to buckle when confronted with real, lived contradiction. The more your name circulates as someone who didn't break, the more cracks appear in the stories they told themselves. That the system is fair, that consequences are absolute, that reputation can be bought back. Your existence forces them to admit, at least privately, that their tools weren't as precise as they claimed. The danger for them isn't only shame, it's instability. Systems thrive on predictability. When predictability collapses, so does their ability to manage outcomes. People start making mistakes, trying to patch holes, overreaching, gaslighting, or rewriting rules retroactively. Those panic moves expose more error, because improvisation reveals how much depended on a controlled script rather than genuine strength. Your survival sets off a chain reaction, a small, honest truth that multiplies into strategic failures. You didn't go looking to dismantle anything. You lived, you endured, and those outcomes did the rest. But the consequence is real. Your name is now the evidence that their fortress has weak mortar. It invites scrutiny and emboldens others to test the walls. Where once they could assume victory by default, they now must account for resilience as a variable. That unsettles the whole ecosystem that relied on certainty. In the end, exposing fragility is a kind of liberation. It doesn't just shame the powerful. It frees the rest of the room to stop pretending the rules are immovable. Your survival rewrites the risk calculus for everyone. The systems that counted on silence and surrender must now face the inconvenient truth. They were never as indestructible as they wanted people to believe. Number 10. Your silence didn't protect them. It amplified you. You kept quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because speaking would have fed the noise they wanted. Your restraint was strategic and contained a force they never planned for. Every day you survived without dramatics, without televised confessions or viral rants. You were building a record they couldn't edit. Their attempts to smear you, rewrite events, or drown you with distractions only made your steady presence more visible. People began to notice the discrepancy between what was being shouted about you and the calm, undeniable fact of you still being whole. That contrast made your name carry more weight than any angry rebuttal ever could. Silence didn't rob you of power. It conserved it. When you didn't react to slander, when you refused to perform outrage on cue, you denied them the satisfaction of watching you crumble. Their narratives needed your collapse to look complete. Without it, their stories felt hollow. That hollowness echoed louder than their loudest lies, because everyone could see the missing piece. You were still here. Your continued presence sent a signal that they hadn't succeeded, and signals travel farther than spokespeople ever will. The other effect of your silence was credibility. People grew tired of staged defenses and calculated outrage. They trusted the person who simply kept living. Your quiet endurance became a benchmark. If the noise about you had to be that dramatic to get attention, maybe the noise was compensating for something. The more extravagant their attacks, the more your calm looked real. That credibility gathered allies who were wary of spectacle but responsive to fact. Those allies started telling the truth in ways that couldn't be bought. Honest conversations, steady support, pragmatic help. Your name began to appear in serious contexts, not as a hashtag but as evidence. Silence also forced them to overplay their hand. Without a public meltdown to amplify their narrative, they tried harder. Cruder lies, broader accusations, flashier campaigns. Those moves backfired because they revealed desperation. When people overreach, they leave traces, contradictions, timelines, witnesses that withstand scrutiny. Your refusal to engage allowed those traces to surface without you having to chase them down. In time, the truth disentangled itself from the theatrics. In short, your lack of noise didn't protect their lies, it exposed them. Every quiet day, you claimed, was a demonstration of endurance that no smear could erase. Your name started to appear in rooms you never entered because the world recognized consistency over claptrap. What seemed like silence to some was actually the loudest testimony you had, an unbroken life that contradicted every rumor. That unspoken truth made your impact irreversible. Number 11. You shifted the atmosphere permanently. You shifted the atmosphere permanently because presence like yours rewrites the rules of a room. People learn to measure themselves against you whether they admit it or not. Your name doesn't just start a conversation anymore. It alters the tempo, the posture, and the honesty of whatever follows. When someone says your name, bodies react, not out of theater, but instinct. Shoulders tighten, voices soften, eyes flick to exits. Those are physical signs of a psychological rearrangement. Your existence changed what was safe to say, who could speak with authority, and which stories would survive scrutiny. That change didn't happen overnight. It accumulated every time you refused to be small, every time you corrected a lie with steady behavior instead of drama, every time you showed up where people expected you to fail and didn't. Each act added to a reputation that functions like gravity. People feel the pull even when you're not in the room because your past actions altered expectations. Expectations are powerful. They shape how people enter a conversation, what assumptions they make, and how they allocate attention. You shifted those assumptions toward accountability, and accountability forces a different kind of human movement. Rooms rearrange around truth because truth makes fabrications awkward. When someone mentions your name now, casual pretense collapses into either careful negotiation or the sudden need to change the subject. That's not mere politeness, it's self-defense. People realize that sloppy narratives will be noticed, and noticed narratives can carry consequences. The atmosphere changes from complacency to calculation, and calculation is risk-averse. That invites more restraint, more honesty, or more evasive tactics. Either way, the dynamic is no longer the same. This permanent shift also creates opportunities. People who felt stifled by falsehood find that your reputation opens space to speak differently. Conversations that would have been dominated by spin become more grounded because your name brings a demand for clarity. Allies show up more solidly. Bystanders pay closer attention to inconsistencies. The room becomes less hospitable to bluster and more supportive of realignment. That's why some people resist mentioning you. Your presence forces them to interrogate their choices, and many prefer the comfort of unchallenged routines. Ultimately, shifting an atmosphere permanently is a quiet kind of revolution. It doesn't rely on loud declarations or viral spectacles. It relies on consistent reality, you living openly and refusing to let others dictate the terms of the narrative. The consequence is practical and immediate. Rooms change posture when your name appears because people cannot pretend ignorance any longer. Your gravity makes them account for what they thought they controlled, and that accountability reshapes behavior long after the conversation ends. Number 12. Your impact can't be reversed. They can try to edit the story, scrub records, or spread a cleaner version of events, but none of that erases the fact that you lived through what you lived through. Survival isn't a paragraph someone can delete. It's a permanent mark on timelines, relationships, and the way people calculate risk. Your existence changed cause and effect. Once something real happens, it reverberates. Attempts to overwrite it leave scars of their own because every rewrite has to account for the original truth you embodied. That permanence shows up in surprising places. Old witnesses who once stayed quiet now remember details they can't unsee. New allies point to your life as proof when they refuse to accept false narratives. The corridors of influence that relied on predictable outcomes now carry a different equation. You are a variable they didn't control. This makes reversal expensive for them, not just politically or socially, but practically. Each effort to obscure your story creates new fractures that draw attention, and attention is what prevents erasure. People who tried to bury you discover that erasure has costs. It forces them into constant maintenance. Invented stories must be retold, lies must be defended, apologies must be calibrated. That kind of housekeeping attracts scrutiny because human memory and human networks are porous. Stories leak. Truth finds seams. Your survival anchors a counter-narrative that doesn't need grand gestures to exist. It simply persists through the evidence of your life. Over time, persistence wins over fabricated clarity. Another reason your impact can't be reversed is that you altered incentives. Where once it paid to look the other way, now it pays to correct course. People who see the long game understand that aligning with reality is less costly than defending a falsehood forever. Your presence shortens the shelf life of lies. The economics of reputation change because your survival makes the truth more useful than a continued cover-up. That's a fundamental shift. Once incentives realign, systems adjust, and adjustments are rarely reversible to their original state. Finally, irreversibility is about memory. People don't forget what they saw, what they felt, or what they learned because of you. Your name becomes a timestamp in others' lives, a reference point for decisions, courage, and clarity. Erasing that would require changing people themselves, which isn't possible without rewriting history of a different kind. Your survival is not a temporary headline. It's a ledger entry that stays open. That is why no amount of spin can truly undo the mark you left. Number 13. Your growth made them shrink. Your growth made them shrink because every step you took forward cast a sharper light on how little movement they had made. It wasn't your intention to compete, but growth always creates contrast. When you healed from wounds they assumed would define you forever, it exposed how tightly they clung to their own excuses. When you upgraded your mindset, your choices, your standards, it made their complacency visible in ways they couldn't ignore. Your name stopped being neutral. It became a quiet reminder that they've been circling the same drain while you've been building staircases upward. This shrinking doesn't always happen out loud. It shows up in subtle ways. The defensiveness in their tone, the dismissiveness they use when your name comes up, the way they try to minimize your progress as luck or a phase. That's not casual criticism, it's self-preservation. To admit your growth would mean admitting their own resistance to change. And that's a mirror many people are unwilling to face. So they attempt to shrink your shine, not realizing that in doing so, they only reveal the gap even more. The truth is, growth has a way of stripping away illusions. While others invested in appearances, you invested in substance. While they clung to patterns, you broke cycles. While they repeated the same chapters, you turned the page and wrote new ones. That contrast becomes undeniable over time. It doesn't matter if they try to distort the story because outcomes are visible. People can see who's evolving and who's decaying. Your name has become shorthand for transformation, and that makes their stagnation harder to disguise. What unsettles them most is that your growth wasn't fueled by external validation, but by internal recalibration. You didn't need applause to level up. You needed honesty, discipline, and courage. That independence is what magnifies the shrinking effect, because it proves that excuses like "no one helped me" or "the timing wasn't right" don't hold weight. You grew anyway, and that dismantles the justifications that keep others stuck. So now, your name carries measurement, not because you asked to be a ruler, but because growth always becomes a benchmark. Whether they admit it or not, people gauge their lives against yours. And the more you expand, the more obvious it becomes who is still standing in the same spot. Your growth didn't just elevate you, it exposed their refusal to move. And in that exposure, they inevitably shrank. Number 14, your name became a living prophecy. Your name became a living prophecy because what you embodied stopped being a private survival story and started pointing toward inevitable change. People who watched you move through hardship noticed patterns. Reconstruction where there had been ruins, honesty where there had been cover-ups, courage where there had been quiet compliance. Those patterns didn't just inspire, they mapped a direction. Over time, your life stopped being an isolated example and began functioning as a forecast for what happens when truth and endurance meet momentum. When your name is said now, it carries the sense that something larger is unfolding. A recalibration of values, a shifting of loyalties, a new standard people will either match or get left behind by. That is the power of a living prophecy. It isn't mystical fluff, it's observable cause and effect made human. Your choices signaled that the old scripts were breakable, and once others saw that break, they followed. Movements often begin in small, stubborn acts. Yours looked like ordinary choices repeated until the pattern became irresistible. People started to treat your name like a timeline marker. Mention it in the right context, and you're predicting who will rise, who will correct course, and where pressure will force change. That predictive force changes behavior because humans respond to models. Leaders, allies, and bystanders begin to place bets based on what your life proves, and bets create momentum. Corporations, communities, and social groups adjust strategies because your survival made certain outcomes more likely. Silence no longer guarantees safety, and performative virtue loses its shelter. Your name doesn't need to preach to work. It acts like a beacon for people searching for a map when everything feels uncertain. For some, that's liberating. For others, it's threatening. Prophecies rearrange priorities. Investments shift, reputations are reevaluated, and old compromises get exposed as liabilities. That exposure accelerates decisions and forces realignment faster than passive critique ever could. The prophecy embedded in your name is not about destiny written in ink. It's about consequence observed in living time. Every time someone acts differently because of you, the prophecy fulfills itself a little more. That feedback loop makes your name contagious. It predicts transformation and then helps cause it. The remarkable thing is that you didn't intend to become a forecast. You only lived with uncompromising honesty and steady courage, and the world translated that into a direction others could follow. Now, wherever your name travels, it carries expectation, not of miracles but of change, accountability, and the slow, relentless remapping of the world around you. In the end, your name carries more than recognition. It carries weight, proof, and consequence. Every struggle you endured, every silent victory, every act of growth has etched something permanent into reality. You're no longer just a person navigating life. You are a standard, a warning, a benchmark, a force that exposes weaknesses, inspires courage, and shifts outcomes without even trying. Your presence rewrites expectations, your endurance exposes lies, and your growth illuminates truths others cannot escape. You became the measure by which people secretly judge themselves, the echo that reminds wrongdoers of unfinished business, and the catalyst that awakens allies who had been waiting for permission to rise. Your name is now a living testament, a currency that carries value, a prophecy that predicts transformation, a mirror that reveals both strength and stagnation. Nothing they do can reverse the impact you've made, and every attempt to erase or diminish you only strengthens the mark you've left. This is the reality of your power. It is subtle but undeniable, quiet but seismic. You didn't need to fight every battle publicly, and you didn't need their approval to make history. Every act of resilience, every decision to rise despite circumstance, and every unwavering moment of truth has multiplied your influence far beyond what they or even you may realize. So the next time your name is spoken, know this: it carries consequence, it carries respect, it carries proof that survival, clarity, and integrity are more powerful than any temporary authority or fabricated narrative. You are no longer just living, you are shaping the world in ways they will feel long after they forget your face. Your impact is permanent, your presence undeniable, and your legacy unstoppable. The truth is simple and brutal. You've made a mark that cannot be erased, a shift that cannot be reversed, and a story that refuses to be silenced. Your name is heavier now, and that weight is proof of everything you survived and everything you've become. If this message hit you and you feel the weight of what we just unpacked, don't let it stop here. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the truths that shake the world. Like this video if it spoke to you on a deeper level, comment below, and share your thoughts. We want to hear how your own journey resonates with this. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to realize the power they carry. Let's make sure these truths reach the people who need them most. Your engagement isn't just support, it's part of spreading impact. God bless you.